How's everybody doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 58. Today, I have a very special guest, one of my old friends, very elusive. He doesn't do too many of these. Today, I'm talking to Ryan McKenney of Trap Them, Life Passed On, Backstabbers Incorporated. Super flattered and honored to have him. Like I said, he doesn't do too many of these. He's an old friend of mine. We kind of grew up in the same scene, more or less. But I'm super stoked to talk to him. And I always looked up to him and tried to go to as many shows, whatever band he was in, I was trying to go see. So we'll go through the old school New Hampshire days and living in Seattle and, all kinds of stuff. But I hope everybody's good. I hope everybody's well. Thank you for anybody who watches this. I really appreciate it. I love doing these things, and hopefully I keep doing them in the future. But thank you, everybody that's tuning in or watching later on or whatever. I usually put them up on YouTube in a few days afterwards. So hopefully, last week I talked to Kathleen from Circle Takes the Square, and Instagram kind of fucked me, and it disappeared when I tried to load it. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So anybody that's here and witnesses this, hopefully I can save it. But thank you. Ryan should be on any second. And we'll get going. School's about to start for my kids tomorrow, which is kind of crazy. So just getting ready to do that later on tonight. Get them in bed early. It's crazy. It's been fun summer with them, and I'm kind of sad to see them, go. But Timmy, my brother. I had to make a little burner account for Ryan to use because he's not on social media. So hopefully this goes smoothly. Tim, what's up, my man? There we go. Sending the request right now. Should be on any second. Ryan, what's good?
Am I doing this right?
Yeah, you're sideways though.
Oh. Man, this is fucking weird. I can't. Okay.
Yeah, I gotta move back a little. My face is like.
How's that?
Perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. Cool.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Perfect. I want to thank you so much for doing this. I haven't seen you since the last Trap Them show at Club Sonia when me and Kev from the network went, and there's Kev right there. Actually, he's on right now too. That was the last time I saw you. So I know you don't do social media at all, so it's like I'm very honored and flattered for you to actually do this with me, and I want to thank you for taking time out to do this.
Oh, it's cool, man. I appreciate it. It's probably the first and last time I'm gonna do anything like this, so I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, like I said, I'm super flattered. Usually when I start, I usually ask what first got you into punk and hardcore. Like, what were the bands that kind of drew you in, and what were you listening to before punk and hardcore? Was it like, classic rock, or were you like, maybe when you were little you listened to pop? What'd you listen to, and what drew you to hardcore, I guess?
I grew up on hip hop. Like when I was in second grade, Run DMC's Raising Hell came out, and I was like, that's what I used my birthday money for. You know what I mean? So it was like, for the most part, MTV Raps kind of guided my childhood. And I had a couple friends that skateboarded, and I sucked at it, but I was interested enough that like, I bought Thrasher magazines and like in the back the ads for, things like Dead Kennedys and stuff like that, where that made me familiar with it, but I didn't go out and invest my time in it. Like I became familiar with it as in it existed, but it took me a little while longer, and then those some of those kids went to shows, and then I went with them, and that's how it really kind of unfolded. I didn't really get to have the like introduction to it on my own by stumbling into it or anything early on, like I mean, sticks in New Hampshire. It's not like it just like flies through downtown and you get to see shit. So yeah, that's pretty much how I did it. And then saw Slapshot, and from that point on, I was like, all right, cool. I mean, first show, got my nose broken. Had to sneak into the show because it was 18 plus, and I was 13, I want to say. So pretty much I did everything expected out of going to a hardcore show all at once.
Nice. What venue was that you snuck into?
Was it like the was the channel around then?
Yes, the channel. Yes.
I think it was that. Like it's one of those things where you can't go down to Boston now and look around and try to remember, because there's no like checkpoints that were there back then anymore. Like they're all gone. So, things like that kind of, memories of where I saw certain shows for the most part. Some of them are pretty clear, but a lot of them are just a blur.
Yeah. Speaking of the channel, that was the first show that I went to. It was 1983. I got to see SSD and DYS and Angry Samoans when I was 11 at an all ages show. And I always tell the story. I was scared shitless, so I didn't end up going back to see a hardcore show until like 87.
Yeah, that would be a crash course in finding out about this.
The channel was always fun though. It was they always had those Saturday and Sunday all ages matinees, and I was just lucky enough to have a few older friends that would bring me. So the channel was great times, and like I said, that was the first time I saw Slapshot down at the channel too as well. And from then on, I guess I was a fan of hardcore.
Yeah.
And also, speaking of Yo MTV Raps, I used to race home in high school just so I could catch the Yo MTV Raps with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover. I would race home, make sure, or I would tape it on VHS tape. I would make sure that the VCR was like ready to go, because I never missed an episode as well.
No, I mean, that was my thing, is like, I really, even later on, like once I was in like junior high and, freshman in high school and stuff, on Friday nights when it was on at, I think it was either like 11, it went from like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. It was like, for the most part, I would stop whatever I was doing to go home for that. Like it was one of those things where like it didn't matter whether I, went to a gathering at a friend's house or anything like that. Like it was kind of expected that around like 10:45, I was like, whether I was mid conversation with someone or not, I was just like, well, gotta go. And then I would go and watch that stuff. And I mean, it's weird now that I think about it, because some of those days where, I worked beforehand and then tried to go hang out with people. And then I got there, and by like midnight, I was like passing out. And like you get in that like NyQuil foggy head zone where like they used to premiere a video at the end at like 12:50 or 12:50 in the morning, and the amount of like fever dreams that I had watching a video premiere where like I knew the artist, but like I thought I was dreaming because I was hearing a song I hadn't heard yet.
Yeah.
And you're just like, am I really is this really Far Side in tuxedos right now doing, why does it sound like R&B? What is happening? I don't, oh God. And then you like wake up in the morning and you're just like, did I see that? I don't know.
Those late night Yo MTV Raps, that was Fab Five Freddy who was doing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they did Dre and Ed Lover for the first hour and Fab Five Freddy was the second hour, which one of the Fab Five Freddy ones was the first time I heard the word shit on TV is because he had Boss as
Oh,
a guest. And he's like asked her where the name came from and she's like, basically it means bitch on some shit. And I was like, whoa. Wow, I can't believe they got away with that. And then like later on, I'm just like, oh, well, it's because it was like 1 in the morning and no one's paying attention.
yeah, speaking of Boss, that single that she had made me go out and buy that tape. So
Sure.
I,
Oh yeah. Yep.
uh,
I that stuff is that era is my golden era, like big time. And it was like it's just kind of weird because I always look at it as like hip hop kind of started the year I was born, like 77. Like I know there was stuff before that, but like by my grades, like growing up is almost as hip hop growed up. Like I felt like I kind of had like a parallel thing,
yeah,
like where as it expanded, it was more, I grew up more and started to be more aware of my surroundings, which kind of made it easier to, understand what was being talked about in those songs, like it's so that was always my first love is that stuff.
yeah. Now, did you grow up in Rochester, New Hampshire? Because that's the first time I met you. Because I was friends with the Fault and Ukulelemock guys. I was, I did all the flyers for Ukulelemock, and before they were Solomon Grundy, I was still doing flyers for them, and I was very good friends with the Fault and Ukule guys. Were you from Rochester? And I guess like I always talk about Safe and Sound, how important it was to me in that scene. Just talk a little bit about Rochester, New Hampshire, and the scene that evolved into something that was really special at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Dover, which was, you know, right next to Rochester, but my Dover had nothing, like nothing. There was no venue, there was no band that was ever going to come there. And so, like, my first local shows were at the Elvis Room in Portsmouth, where, I ended up going most times during the week, where it didn't really matter what was playing. It was more like the idea of live music being near me was enough for me to go and, you know, see whatever was happening there. But yeah, I mean, Safe and Sound when that opened was a a very eye-opening experience. Like it was really cool to have a lot of bands have a place to actually pass through. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't count the amount of shows I went to as soon as it opened where, I ended up being one of like three people that were there. Like, once that place opened and started having shows all the time, it kind of just became part of my daily life where I'd clock out from work and go home, take a shower, then just drive to, if it wasn't Safe and Sound, it was the Elvis Room. As I got older, it was literally like drive anywhere I fucking could. And for the most part, I went by myself, which was fine because, I didn't really need to engage in conversation when I was going to go for the pure purpose of watching bands and
Yeah.
watching music.
And there was also like Cafe Eclipse in Concord and Cafe Savoy in Manchester.
Yeah,
Just New Hampshire was like, it's funny. I always talk about New Hampshire scene, and everybody's like, it's not really like a scene, but that scene was thriving back then. There was shows every single week, if not two shows every week, and there was big bands that were playing all those places. You know what I mean? You would see Earth Crisis at Cafe Savoy. I mean, Cave In and Converge, played Safe and Sound, a bunch of times, or maybe not Converge so much. but Cave In played there a bunch, and you know, that's where I started to like all those bands. You know what I mean? Like Die My Will and Non Compos Mentis was the first time I saw them at Safe and Sound and Cafe Eclipse, and I was blown away by that. So I wish more people captured that time frame, because like me and you growing up in that time era, like I said, was really, really special to me. Can you tell me what kind of bands you liked to watch back then, and did that make you want to be in a band? And was Life Passed On your first band that you got into?
Um, Life Passed On was basically my first band. Like, I did bands before that, but it was more the feeling out process between, me and other classmates, basically, like that liked SST records. And it was more like, we would have like conversations of like, so you would want to be in a band? Yeah. What do you want to do? I kind of want to annoy people. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Let's do, like, you like the Milkmen, like, and you like Minutemen, you like all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, like, let's just make bad music that pisses people off, you know. So, but Life Passed On was pretty much like my first foray into actually doing what I wanted to do. But as far as back then, no band will ever beat Die My Will. No band since then has ever made me feel that way. No band will ever touch Die My Will, as far as I'm concerned. That was like a pure religious experience every time, and I would go anywhere I possibly could when they were playing to go see them. Like, that is still the most ferocious, sheer brutality. Like, I can't even put it into words, but that is the band that will always be the most important to me, as far as like really setting the tone of exactly what I wanted to hear and what I still want to hear. I still pretty much listen to them every other day as I'm walking somewhere. Like, that's among the like 10 things I have on my phone that I listen to. So but there was a lot of bands back then that, the only way I can put it is like New Hampshire was almost like a stopover for a lot of these bands. Like, and a lot of them, it was very early on in their existence, or their first time doing like a full tour, where they needed a checkpoint in between like Massachusetts and Maine, or like, like doing that circle. Like bands like I saw Dissolve there for the first time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who was on the show. No, I do remember now. It was Driven. And it was like a Sunday afternoon. It was like 2 p.m, and I just watched this singer bash the microphone into his nose, and his nose fucking explodes immediately, and he's just going nuts. And I'm like looking around, and there's like 10 people there to see this. And that's how, when you're kind of in the like diehard zone where you want to go to these shows no matter what, those are the ones that you kind of remember being like, I was one of the select few that were there to like witness this thing that to me really mattered. And you just wish that show had 200 people.
Yeah.
Like, you wish some of these bands that only got discovered once they were done and gone, and that's when people found out about them. That's the only time where I'm like, I wish hardcore and punk and metal had a time machine where people were allowed to go back and see certain bands like that. Not go back and see the staple ones that everybody knows now but never got to see back then. I want them to see the bands like that really, set a blueprint for bands that went on to be recognized.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when before Dead Eyes Under when they were Fleshhold. That was huge for me too as well. Like all those bands, it seemed like a lot of Connecticut bands that would come up to New Hampshire were so brutal. Like Dynamite, like I said, I got to rock the shirt right there.
Ooh,
Fleshhold, who turned into Dead Eyes Underground Zero, was always like one of my favorites too as well. And it, like you said, it's just special to see um, those bands play back then. And speaking of Die My Will, I don't know if you know this, but they're back together again, and they're about to do a recording, which I don't know if you knew that, but they're recording.
I did not know that. Oh man, that's I don't even know what to. I don't want to have to leave the house. Shit. All right, well that's happening.
Yeah, I heard that 2 weeks ago, and I was like, wait, you guys are recording? And they're like, yeah, you heard it here. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, I can't wait to hear it.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. That is like, I don't want to get angry anymore, and I'm gonna hear that, and I'm gonna be angry, and it's gonna. Oh man, wow, that's awesome. Thank you for telling me that, and I'm really curious about that. No,
Yeah,
I'm not. They're gonna. It's gonna be fucking awesome. It's done my will. It's not like they're not. Man, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. I was very excited about it, definitely.
Wow.
Um, Now, speaking of Life Passed On, were you, and Matt Servin, he wanted me to say hello to you. I had talked to Matt, you know, probably one of my first 10 talks. I got to speak to him, and he, DM'd me and said, make sure to say hi to you. So were you a fan of As I Bleed, and then you became friends with those guys, and that kind of turned into Life Passed On? How did Life Passed On kind of come about?
Um, I I don't think I was initially friends with As I Bleed. Like I mean, I saw those guys at the shows at Safe and Sound and stuff, and saw them play. And then Matt ended up working at the screen printing shop that I was working at, and I think at at the initial point, I think he was kind of like turned off by me, as in like uh man, I don't even know how to say it. Like I don't think I was in the same category of enthusiasm for certain types of music as him. And I think it took, a couple of weeks for him to realize, like, oh no, he's not a goon. Ryan's okay. So, from there, we talked a little bit more about bands. We ran into each other at shows like pretty much most nights because he was there also, as well as Brian. So, um, from there, we just kind of became friends, like I mean, when you're working with someone 40 hours a week, it's kind of hard to not end up in conversations. Like when you're doing the same things when you're not at work, you're also seeing them. So I think there was just a friendship that brewed, and I wasn't in a band, and I think we just kind of got talking about it one day, and I mean, I really think it was just like, yeah, no, let's try to do a band type thing. And, I think he had other friends that were interested in doing it. I mean, I really think that's what it came down to, because I have no musical ability. So I pretty much was like, no, yeah, if you do a band, I can shout. That sounds good to me. Like, I really had no, like, it's not like I could put it all together, because, like, literally being just a frontman vocalist, you have the least amount of work to do, and you're not in control. you, you're at the whim of the people that can actually make the music. So I mean, I kind of waited until he said, yeah, I think we have a drummer and a bassist, and so do you want to do it? And I think I kind of just came from there, and we talked about what we wanted to do for music. And you know, I think at that point, like when we first started, we both were on the same page with like, you know, loving bands like Integrity and, you know, things like that, where um, we knew we weren't going to be able to sound like Integrity or other bands like that, but I think there was enough of a an agreement on what a band should sound like that we worked from that.
Yeah, and the brutalness of it. I mean, As I Bleed is a lot different from Life Passed On because I think it's a lot more brutaler and faster and more aggressive, and that's what turned me onto it. Is when I first heard your first demo, I was blown away, and I also always talk about this. I searched and searched for decades to get your second demo because nobody had it. And it's, like I said, nobody had it. And then I don't know if you know Nick Flanagan. It's Chris Flanagan from False Cousin, who was he was in Farewell Chapter.
Yeah.
He had it still on tape, and he taped it for me just like maybe like less than a year ago, and I've been fucking searching for that demo forever. Even Doug Tuttle reached out to me and was like, you have that? And I'm like, yeah, I just got it. And he's like, can you send it to me? Because he didn't have it. It's very, very hard to find. It's very rare. And the second demo I love so much, but I don't.
What, I don't even remember what it was.
It was it just had like a weird picture of a gun on the front of it. It's very, very short. It only had maybe 5 songs on it. It's very short. It's very, very short. I'll send it to you if you want it.
You know, I'm really curious what it sounds like. It's all like at that point, you know, 25 years ago. I can't, I like really don't remember much of that stuff. Like, I mean, I do. Like, I remember some songs, but I literally have nothing that I've ever recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. Life Pass On actually has a Bandcamp that has the first demo on it, but it doesn't have the second demo on it, actually.
Weird. I guess I'll listen to it at some point and remember what I did.
I don't want to speak on Life Passed On too much, but I do have some flyers still here. I have the Life Passed On, Fault, Non Compos Mentis, Ookla show that was at Cafe Eclipse.
Oh man,
That's one of the flyers I made, and I also have the famous Dover Skate Fest.
Oh man,
With I made this as well, and I still have this in my possession as well. And also on top of that, I have a picture of you. There you are, right here. During the Ookla.
That's old.
And there's another picture of you right here. There you are.
Oh man, I wish I was still that young.
So I had some nostalgia to throw at you that I still have in my possession from back then.
Man, that is crazy. Like even those flyers, like remembering some of those shows now just from that, because otherwise I would never remember that shit until someone actually gives me a pinpoint thing to remember by. Like that is really weird. It's awesome that you have that stuff.
I also sent a picture to your wife of you at the Elvis room. I'm not sure who was playing, but you had a Larry Bird jersey on. I don't know if you, but I was like just searching the internet, and I was like, holy shit! I was like, there's Ryan. I got to send this to her. So
yeah, it's hard to explain to her like what the shows were like back then here. You know, like I mean, obviously it was much different than where she grew up, and also I'm much older than her, so I went to shows in a different era.
Yeah. I back then it was a lot rougher than it. Well, I mean, like I see the Hate 5-6 videos, and it's a lot different than what it was when we were in the dancing and stuff like that. I think it was more of an art form when we were younger, and now it's more of kind of just like see who can punch each other in the face, now. But I feel like there was more grooviness and hip hop dancing mixed with like mosh pit, flailing.
There's a lot of like, I look at that era like in like New Hampshire era as like it was like a feeling out process for hardcore and metal and punk and stuff like that, where a lot of people weren't exposed to it that lived in this area, and so like I think back to how crowds were and the way certain people danced and everything, it was like they were having building blocks towards getting their own thing, like that Sick of It All video, where they do the different dance moves, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It was like that where there was like an influence from seeing how other areas, how the crowds did things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was, I do kind of look at it as like young growing up versions of people learning about hardcore here.
Yeah, definitely. I remember Max from Ukulelemock would always do he'd do like a robot in the middle of the pit, and then sudden he would do a spin kick. Like that's why it was it was very different back then.
Yeah, it was fun though. It was definitely like, you knew which shows it was going to be fun and you're probably going to get hurt. And there was also the shows where like, if you tried to have fun, you would have like part of the crowd be angry that you're dancing.
Yeah.
That was like, there was like no middle of the road back then. Like the way the music was, there was either like, all right, there is dancing and people mosh and everything, and that's what's supposed to happen. Or there was the other end of it where there was, like people in New England learning about emo and taking it to a different way of where like they forgot what the whole fucking point of this music was, and it became something really like uncomfortable where you wanted to go there for your reason to go, which was to watch angry music and feel something from that angry music, and you're not allowed to do anything because there's these people that needed a soapbox to tell you that's not how things need to be done. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just a really like it was like a crapshoot every time you went to a show what it was going to be like.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Definitely. I always remembered when Overcast played. It was usually a violent show up in Hampshire. Always. I'd always come home like bruised and battered and bloody nose and stuff like that. Pretty much every Overcast show. And Ukulelemock always brought some craziness. So, especially to themselves when they were, kicking each other and punching each other on stage as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember Pete broke a guitar over my head, like during a Ukla set, but it wasn't like intentional. Like, man, I would never have remembered this till right now. Like, he was doing his Pete thing, which was awesome. He literally did not give a fuck what was going to happen. And I just remember it being up front and him swinging the guitar, and all I kind of felt was like a doink, because I've been hit enough in the head where nothing feels like anything anymore. Yeah. Or then, and I just felt like a doink, and I looked up and like the neck had completely snapped off, and he kind of had this look holding the guitar, just staring down while this. The neck is just dangling like this, and he looks up at me, and I was just like, oh man, like I didn't do any. I was standing here, and he was just like, and I think he said, "Set's over."
Yeah.
Like,
I remember at the Safe and Sound, he he hit one of his friends, this kid named Sully. He was swinging the guitar, and he hit him in the crowd. And Sully, while he was playing, Sully went on stage and punched him in the face, right across his face. And these guys are friends, and
Yeah.
didn't even miss a step. He was just like, he got hit, and then he like kept on playing and like doing his crazy stuff. But I remember like memories like that, very vividly.
Yeah. Yeah. Ukla was always very fun to watch. And they were just really nice guys, and even after they broke up, getting to run into them, like, from that point on when they were doing other bands and kind of just seeing Max or Adam,
Yep, Adam. Yep.
running into either of them, was always pretty cool. Pete, I ended up somehow constantly seeing, and then once he was in the network, like when they passed through and I lived in Seattle, they would stay at the house. Um, Even when Trap Them did like 3 days, we did a festival in Copenhagen, and Pete was living there and got in touch with me beforehand, so I flew out there a day early and stayed with him in Copenhagen. And, it's just cool to always catch up with guys like that.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the network, at the time, your girlfriend did she did vocals on one of the songs on Kent Bishop Manning. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, she did.
I forget what that was. It following and failing or something like that. I remember. I didn't know that at the time, but somebody was like, "Oh yeah, that was Ryan's girlfriend at the time," and I was like, "Oh really?" I was like, I had no idea. I talked to Kev still and Tim. And those guys are great guys. I don't see Chris Flanagan from Fault too much. But those guys were really, really great friends of mine, and it's good to still. Max, I think, is living in California. I talked to him here and there, and the young kids from Ukulelemock, Bulldog and Wallace, got into a band with me right after Ukulelemock. I don't know if you knew that, but we were a band called Last House on the Left. We did like a demo and stuff like that, but it was almost like it was kind of like a heavy, but with like emo-ish singing, so it had screaming and like singing as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the name sounds familiar, but for some reason I thought Max wasn't in that, was he?
No, Max was started in High School Sweethearts with me, and then he started another band, and then I just kind of went on with those guys in High School Sweethearts. He recorded the first demo that we did. We played a handful of shows, and then he started doing. I think the band was called Shaniqua and the Skullfuckers. After that,
I knew it was a name that would ring a bell once I.
so Backstabbers and Life Passed On. Life Passed On kind of just evolved into Backstabbers Incorporated, correct? Because Evolution sounds like Life Passed On to me, and then you guys kind of switched your sound up after that. Can you just tell me the transition of how that happened and what was it like for you?
I think the name ended up getting changed to Backstabbers Incorporated. One, because it sounded like a cool name, but two, I think because we had a couple different members than when Life Passed On had started. And, maybe like 6 months or a year after those guys had joined the band, I think it felt like a different band than Life Passed On, so we changed the name. But yeah, most of the stuff on Evolution was, Life Passed On songs. Man, I'm going to be horrible trying to remember anything from that era. I didn't think I was going to be one of these type of people, but I it's just so much of my life was spent back then doing this stuff that it really does feel like, like a 5, 6, 7 year chunk was like compressed because it was so much of the same thing, living and breathing, making music or going to watch music, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've been in the game a long time, and when Trap Them, finally hung up the boots, did it feel like a very long, like you've had, you had your time, you have a huge catalog of everything that you've been on. Was it like, did you feel like I've had enough of this, like touring and playing shows and recording and doing music? Was it time for you to just be like, all right, I want to kind of get onto a regular life maybe? And was that your feeling, or how were you feeling when that happened?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, that was it. That was it. I mean, it was a it, it was partially like me and Brian were very much on the same wavelength. Felt like the last record we did was everything Troutman was supposed to do. I don't want to do more just for the sake of doing more. Um, I can't really tour anymore. I can't really. I mean, I can't really. Shouldn't even be playing shows anymore. Like I've had a lot of concussions from doing this dumb shit, and there's a lot. There's a laundry list of physical problems from not being responsible while playing these shows that kind of affects doing it anymore. But I mean, the truth is, you know, I'm pretty happy right now. I have a wonderful life and I have a wonderful wife, and I'm, you know, in the middle of nowhere where no one can find me. And um, I don't really feel the need to do that anymore. And one of the things I always felt was that uh, unless you're actually angry, you don't fucking do this music. You don't. Like, I mean, doing reunions is fine and well. Doing all those things is okay for many people that still feel passion for the music and feel like they still need to create and do these things. But as far as I'm concerned, for me, Trap Them was a very, very angry band. I was a very, very angry person. And if I went out there and did those songs now to do a reunion or something, I would be full of shit because I'm not going to go out and fake being pissed off.
Yeah.
That's fucking assholes. And that's for performance artists. And I'm not that. If I ever got to a point right now where work drives me nuts and other stuff, I have incredible debts and horrible shit that makes me angry, then yeah, maybe I would. But as as far as how I feel right now, I would I would just be a really fake person to go up there in front and try to pretend that I'm like as pissed off as I was during the era of being in that band. And I'm not gonna fucking do it. Like I refuse to do that to anyone that actually likes the band.
No, definitely understandable. Definitely understandable. Um, with Backstabbers, you weren't as angry. You're saying basically you were more angry during Trap Them than you were at Backstabbers.
Um, I think I was. I mean, I was definitely angry during Backstabbers, but it was also growing up and being influenced by hardcore and punk and learning about things to be angry about. Being exposed to things that, you know, when you're shoved out into real life, uh, I didn't go to college. I graduated high school the day I graduated high school. I moved out. I started a full time job. So you get the crash course in reality. Then you suddenly realize, oh my God, I can't afford anything and I can't pay any bills. And then you're also listening to this music, bringing up all the other things that are happening in the world that also are shitty. So you are angry, um, but it's an amalgamation of many things in small doses that make you angry like that, and that's what I felt like with Backstabbers and Life Passed On. Is that like there were so many things to be angry about that you couldn't pinpoint it. Trap Them was more at the point where I was, I mean, I was almost almost 30 when we started being an actual band. And I knew exactly what I was pissed off about at that point. And there was a very fine set of things uh, that are just in my circle of life that were enough to make me constantly pissed. And on top of that, I kind of realized what type of person I was. I'd grown up at that point, and I realized that through my lack of focus on anything, I was focused on the fact that I was finding flaws with everything around me and everything to do with me. So it was a lot easier to trap them into something that was just basically rage and desperation to have something. And, I kind of just took it from there. So, but yeah, there was really, Trap Them was as close to shutting off any intelligent thought about self-harm as there could have been. I did what I needed to do in that band, which was anything I possibly could.
Yeah. Now that you're not playing music and doing music, is there any fever in you to, I know touring is out of the question and stuff like that, but do you get a fever sometime where you want to just create, something heavy, or in turn, have you ever wanted to do something that wasn't aggressive and heavy? Maybe, get into a band where like you possibly were singing or something like that. Is there still a fever inside you that like you want to create, but obviously like touring and like, getting into a band and all that stuff is kind of a pain in the ass now.
I really don't feel it. I mean, I on one hand, yeah, there are like fleeting moments where I think it would be cool to do something, but it literally goes like, I mean, that light bulb turns on and off like really fast. I just really don't. I felt like Trap Them was everything I had wanted to do. I really like. I don't feel like I don't feel a void. Like I really feel like that was just, as far as making music, that was what I should have done. And now that that's over, I don't really feel the urge to do that. I have my other avenues of trying to do something creative. I like making food. I like, you know, it's hard for me to focus on being creative anymore. I create a lot of things in my head, and that's about it. And that's all I really need, Like I'm never bored because I can't sit still. Like this is literally probably going to be the longest I sit still in a, in weeks. So I mean, I just I love being creative. I just feel like there's different outlets of me trying to use creativity at this point other than making music, because I really feel like there's nothing that I need out of making music that I haven't already done.
Yeah, I mean the catalog speaks for itself. The touring speaks for itself. I mean, it literally like, I mean, the European tours, the fests, the catalog, like I said, speaks for itself. From even back from Life Passed On all the way to Trap Them. Like for me, looking from the outside, you've done everything that, like when I was in a band, that's what I wanted, and you've done everything that I kind of wanted to do, which I never got to do. So I totally understand where you're coming from when you're saying that that's kind of in the past, and you've moved on, and there's bigger and better things in the future, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a simple guy. I'm really simple. I don't want much out of life other than to work hard at whatever I'm doing, constantly have thoughts in my head about other things, and then around 5 o'clock I eat dinner, and then by 6 o'clock I'm in bed reading a book for at least 4 hours. That is what I want out of my days. A nice schedule, a nice routine. I don't have to do an overnight drive for 10 hours to get to the next show. I I did all I could do. I'm good. I'm good.
um, when Brian got into the band Backstabbers, did you know then that something was going to evolve between you two? Because obviously you guys had something special. I was he was from December Wolves, correct?
Yeah.
Before that, which was a great band too. Did you know that there was something special when he kind of got into Backstabbers, and then how did that kind of get into Trap Them? Because I know like Cunt Heir to the Throne was very different from Crown Feral. You know what I mean? It was almost like a back to like a Backstabbers Life Passed On 7-inch. You know what I mean? Or whatever a demo or whatever it was. Um, did you know like once you met him that things were gonna go that way?
Yeah, absolutely. We met because we both worked in Newbury Comics. Um, and I think after a couple of weeks where we actually had a shift or two at the same time, there was crossing paths of talking about some bands. And we came from two very different uh, genres, I guess. Brian grew up on metal. He was familiar with certain hardcore bands, and I didn't know jack shit about metal other than I didn't like most of it. I didn't really know about most of it, and like I just wasn't. It wasn't something I was gonna attempt to like invest my time into learning about because I had enough stuff in the hardcore and punk area where I just didn't care. But I think we kind of had like certain bands and grounds where they crossed paths, and we started talking about those. And at that point, December Wolves didn't do anything, like they weren't playing shows or anything like that. And we had needed a second guitarist, and he was obviously very good.
Mm.
And I asked him if he wanted to. He saw us play a couple shows, and he was like, "Wow, you do some really weird shit while you sing." And we kind of talked about it a little bit more, and I asked him if he wanted to come play. It's not like I was like, "Hey, you want to try out? We'll see how it works." Like, anybody who said that in a band that like all you had was like a demo or something, like, "Well, we'll try you out." Fuck you. Like, come on. Like, can you play? All right, cool, you're in. Like, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it didn't take long from him being in there for us to talk even further. And at that point, we had already become very close friends from, again, like being at work together and stuff. And then we decided to do a drum machine version of Trap Them back in like 2002. And I sat there in his bedroom and did vocals for a bunch of grind songs. And we did it, and then we talked about doing more for a couple of years before we actually did more. And at that point, we both were in a position where we both felt the same way, which was, I want to do this as a band, not as a drum machine thing or a bedroom thing. I want to fucking really tour again. I want to really go. I want to make this something. And I think from there, the idea of what the music Trap Them should make, um, we always had the same viewpoint, which was, I was obviously not a metal singer. I came from a punk hardcore background, and that is how I could sing. Brian was extremely talented at playing metal, and if you can play metal, you sure as fuck can play punk and hardcore.
Yeah.
I think us doing this as a band gave him a chance to explore an avenue that he hadn't been able to go down uh, with any other bands he had been in. And I watched a progression of him like getting more and more ideas because it really was like opening Pandora's box for him. And it was fucking awesome because he's so talented that seeing him craft these songs that he knew had to work with my capabilities was really awesome. And it was a good progression from how Trap Them started with that 7-inch and how we slowly molded into what we wanted to do and what we knew was the focus until we got to Crown Pharaoh, which was, it encompassed all that we had intended this band to lead towards.
Yeah, definitely. Now, meeting him, did he make you delve deeper into the horror movie aspect? Because I know he's a huge horror movie guy, and especially the very obscure ones. Did he make you dive deep into that world?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely exposed me to a lot of that stuff in a very different way. I mean, I had exhausted my local video rental stores of watching every horror movie they had, and I mean, I didn't have a DVD player when they came out. I was pretty much at the mercy of what was around me, and that involves almost everything to do with music or books or art or movies, like all that stuff. Like I kind of just had this like bubble where if it was outside of that bubble, it was unattainable to me because of my lack of being able to focus on a lot of things. Like, and so him exposing me to a lot of horror, like that I wasn't familiar with, was awesome. There's not much I could expose him to as far as that. I mean, every once in a while, I'd be able to bring up something where I'm like, have you seen this? And he'd be like, no, dude, that looks horrible. And I'm like, no, really, you've shown me enough. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. And he's like, I don't know. And then like a couple weeks later, he'd be like, all right, I watched it. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. But I mean, he could just give me like a list of 10 movies a day. And then I'd watch them all and I'd be like, yeah, these are all awesome. And, we started going to chiller conventions and spending way too much money on bootleg, like hacked up, fake subtitled, Japanese horror from, the early 2000s. Spend way too much money on some of this shit where I think back now and I'm like, I spent like $50 for High Tension before it came out in the US, for like, just to be able to see it. And then it's like, you kind of think about that now where nothing is unattainable almost immediately.
Yeah.
You can get your hands on anything, whereas back then it was like, all right, well, I just got paid and I really want to see A Tale of Two Sisters, and I know all there is that weird version with the messed up subtitles, but it comes with a film cell. I don't know if it's a real film cell, but it's only $75. I guess I should do it. Dude, god damn. But I mean, that's when you're obsessive about certain things, and I think that's another case for me and him where we like, he recognized that I wasn't just doing it to do it. Like, I have passion for this stuff also.
Yeah, definitely. Doug Tuttle just joined too. What's up, Doug? Good to see you.
Hi, everyone that I haven't talked to in forever.
Speaking of Backstabbers, here's another show that I at Club Exit 23, High School Sweethearts played in Backstabbers. As the Sun Sets, unfortunately canceled on that show, but we played it together.
That was a cool place.
Yeah, Exit 23 was fun.
That was like Haverhill, right?
Yep, Haverhill, Massachusetts. Jeremy, I think, was the guy who ran it. He was always worried about the the picture window. No moshing by the picture window. Somebody's gonna fall out. He was like basically like, you know, holding his hands like in front of it, like don't go near that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of really awesome shows that was always like a fail-safe play. Hold on, I gotta get coffee. All right. If we were doing a weekend with someone, that was always a good place to get in touch with him, and almost always you'd be able to do a show there.
Yeah.
Like when American Nightmare first started, I was like, I'd known Wes for quite a while, and we always saw each other. And when they started playing shows, I was like, you want to do like a weekend, like, and those are the places we would go. Like,
Yeah.
like, because it's not like I was a networker. It's not like I had a vast area of people to contact. I had like a select few people that I met and then remembered their number. Otherwise, like, we wouldn't have had shows. Like, it's just the way it was. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a butterfly.
The two shows that I set up with Backstabbers, I don't even remember who I got in touch with. I don't know if it was you or Matt or I'm not even sure how. Like, I could have written you a letter in the mail, just had your address or something like that, and asked you guys to play. But I did set up two shows there with Backstabbers, and Jeremy was a great guy. He would just be like, I would ask him, hey, can I set up a show at this date? And he'd be like, yeah, how many bands do you have? And I'd be like, I don't know, like 5 or whatever. And he would be like, all right, well, I can only pay him like, $20. So I was like, hey, whatever you can do. If we can play here, that would be perfect. And that was a great place because that guy would just let you set up any show. Didn't matter. He just got that window broken. That was his big thing.
Exactly.
Going back to Backstabbers, touring wise, do you remember any great memories that you had in Backstabbers touring in any memorable shows back then?
A select few. Here's the thing. No one gave a fuck about Backstabbers until, like, later on. No one gave a shit. The amount of shows we played to 20 people, like, around on every tour. Like, it's not like I'm not exaggerating that, like, we did it for the love of it. Like, there was, we just, no one gave a shit until later. But there were a few odds and ends shows that, I kind of remember certain things. Like, we did like 7 weeks one summer around the US, and almost all of it sucked because most of the shows didn't happen, or it was just like, it was a fucking nightmare. Like, but places like that is the beauty of making and playing this type of music and touring, is like, we're in Victoria, Texas, and there are a ton of kids at the show, and I don't even know if they knew who we were, but god damn it, they were gonna fucking mosh and run around and go crazy, and it was awesome. Like, it's just one of those type of things where some places it just, you needed that. You needed those random shows like that, and I think those are more important to me than any expectations for certain shows I had. There's it. It was like back in an era where, like, I got more excited about the bands we might be playing with on the show. That was the thing that, like, I got stoked about. Like, if I was like, holy shit, in blah blah blah, we're playing with, and of course I can't think of anyone right now in my head. I do. That shitty ass tour, we got to San Diego. Our show was, or we were taken off the show because 2 shows ended up being combined, and we were booted off because we were the nobodies out of the 2 shows. So we drove to the other show, and Mitch from Trash Art was with us, and he went and talked to either the promoter or whoever else was there, but basically he one of the bands that was playing was the Locust, and Mitch knew Justin, I want to say his name is, but basically he brought up like, yeah, no, the two shows got combined, and these guys were taken off, and he was like, well, that's shitty. Why don't they play? And like, that's all it took is
Yeah.
someone from the Locust going, why would you not let one band not play? And they were like, all right, well, you can have 10 minutes. And we literally ran the shit inside, set it up on the floor, and plugged in. I heard one, because I mean, it was like in a gym. So it was like packed. It was like 300 or 400 people because of the bands that were playing. And I remember them plugging in, and as soon as there was like guitars and feedback and, putting together drums, I actually heard someone say, oh man, it's a hardcore band. And that's because the bands that were on the show were like, it was The Locust and Lightning Bolt and Harkonnen and someone else. But basically it was in that era where
Yeah.
like a band that would play stuff like us didn't get on those shows.
Yeah.
And really just hearing that, I was like, this is going to be awesome. And it was. We got done, and like, more than anything, it's like I more enjoyed when our peers in bands appreciated what was being done. And that's what I've always felt like, is like I really liked when I got to talk to a band after or something, and they were like, dude, that was great.
Yeah.
You guys, that was really cool. Those are the things that were like, fuck yeah. All right, this band that I love or that I grew up with, like hearing them say that they liked the music I made. Like going on tour with Napalm Death. It was like, dude, I'm like sitting here with Barney showing him Whole Foods and showing him the buffet at Whole Foods, and he's all excited because I'm showing him like how to eat a shitload of food in a Whole Foods.
Yeah.
What planet am I on where this is the shit that like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I'm like listening to this guy while I'm at work, and now I'm on tour with him, and like those are the things that I remember.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, do you have a lot of memoirs from that stuff, or like did you like, speaking of like the catalog that you've had, did you save any of that stuff, or is it kind of like it's kind of like with me with High School Sweethearts? I don't have anything. I don't have the shirts we made. I don't have a demo. I don't have the second EP. I don't have anything that I don't have Last House on the Left demo. Do you have all that stuff, or is that kind of just you were just like, eh?
I got nothing. I mean, here's the thing: is like I moved around a lot for many different reasons, but for a very long time, I've been a minimalist. I knew I made the art, and I knew I created something. Revisiting it, for the most part, isn't essential to me. So holding on to things probably would be a good call, because my memory is obviously starting to fade from all the concussions, but I kind of just feel like whatever I did, I'll remember it without trying to give myself something that would allow me to revisit it. If like talking about this stuff, having certain things pop back in my head that I remember is good enough for me.
Yeah.
There's like just random shit that happens, like even walking down the street, if I see a certain color car go past, I remember a time where we almost got in an accident because it was after the show when I was too busy eating French fries and I wasn't paying attention. Like like I'd rather have those type of things happen to trigger a memory than like forcing it.
Yeah, definitely understandable. Definitely. I don't want to keep you too long. Usually on these talks, I do a little rapid fire at the end of them. And also, like, I know the Bloodshed Fest and stuff like that. I don't really want to delve into that because, like, it's been asked to you a million times about when you broke your feet and stuff like that.
Oh, that's what's the name of it.
Yeah, Netherlands. I've seen a few interviews where that's all they kind of like focus on, and like if you if you Google your name, that comes up a million times. You know what I mean? And
I was waiting for my new job to Google my name. I'm waiting for it because I know what's going to happen. And luckily, I mean, it's a restaurant, so I'm just doing same thing as before, and they're in my age level. But I'm like, all I keep thinking is, if they end up Googling my name, there's going to be some weird shit. And they're going to be like, is that guy? And it's kind of hard not to disguise myself. I'm recognizable from anything that shows up on any Google search. So I'm waiting for that conversation where they're like, so you did some shit, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of bloody pictures of you online, and like I said, the cast with you sitting in an office chair and stuff like that. But like I said, that's like everybody asks you that, so I didn't really want to delve into that too much. Like I said, but the most unrecognizable that I've seen, when I see you here and there back in the day, was when you had a beard. Like you kind of looked a little different when you rocked a beard.
Yeah. I mean, I hate beards.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, even this right now is enough to like make me go crazy, but it's out of pure laziness anytime I had a beard. Yeah. Or the fact that I couldn't afford to get a new pair of clippers. That's really what it came down to. And for the most part, whenever I had longer hair, it's because I was being too stingy, and I was like, I'm not spending $20 for some fucking clippers. I'm not doing this right now. No way. That's really it. But I do. I mean, it's true. Like when I had longer hair, or if I had a beard or anything like that, like I definitely looked like I was part of those memory games where you just slap something on and it just did not look right.
All right, I'll get going with the questions because I don't want to keep you too long. So my first question I always ask is favorite New England punk hardcore band for you of all time.
Time I Will. No competition.
Oh, I love Down My Will. Like I said, I'm glad that I gave you that good info today about.
Thank you.
My second question: what was the first punk hardcore show you attended?
Slapshot.
My next question: all-time favorite punk hardcore show you played, and can you give me three? One with Life Passed On, one with Backstabbers, and one with Trap Them. Like, what were your favorite, most memorable shows in all three of those bands, if you can remember? Like, especially Life Passed On was so far back.
Life Passed On, I will say, I think, anytime we got to play with like, I had put together a Halloween show. Man, holy shit, I remember weird things. This is awesome. I put together a Halloween show, and it was like, Blood Has Been Shed, Piecemeal. Maybe Ukulelemock was on that.
I think actually, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know when that was, but that was pretty cool. Because I think that was after we had done a demo. And so just having a few people there know our songs, it blew my mind. Like, that person knows what's about to happen. This is crazy, So, yeah, that would be the Life Passed On one. Backstabbers, the tour we did right as Kamikaze Missions came out, we played a New Jersey metal and hardcore fest. And this is after we'd had the previous 4 shows canceled. And I caught a really bad cold and forced myself to do that set. And I'll never see the photos again or anything like that. But basically, I was so sick that I was blowing snot spider webs out of my nose the entire set. And there's all these like stills of like these giant webs like flying out of my nostrils while we were playing. And I think that one is most memorable to me because I think people just didn't expect a band like us to be on something like that. Or I guess we just weren't expected to be okay. And it seemed like people liked us. Um, I mean, it's really that. That's all it really takes sometimes.
Yeah, true.
I mean, Trap Them, man, there are so many good shows.
Yeah, I mean, does one stick out where you're like, this was the, topping on the cake?
I'm gonna say an entire tour instead of one show.
Yeah.
And it was the first time we went to Europe. I had never toured there. Brian had never toured there. It really was a dream. And we had lucked out because basically we got to be on a tour where we were touring with one of Brian's favorite bands in Rotten Sound and one of my favorite bands, which was Victims. And here we were going over there, and there's no tour that will ever be like that. That was a crash course in having the funnest thing that could have happened. Like, we were on a bus with all these guys that were like-minded like us, and we opened those shows out of 4 bands, but it was Europe, and so people showed up early, and we didn't have that many records out or anything, but there was enough respect from them where they could see that we were making good music.
Yeah.
And it was just, for like 3.5 weeks, I had the fucking time of my life hanging out with guys. Like, literally got done the show, got in the bus, and there were like 40 different, bottles of alcohol and 50 different bottles of soda, and we were making the concoctions of all concoctions while blasting Discharge over the fucking speakers. And there was just like, no, it was like romper room for like literally 3.5 weeks. There was no sleeping. There's no sleeping in hardcore.
Yeah.
Like, it was awesome. And I mean, almost all those shows were just fantastic. And I think out of any of them, playing London for the first time, and we played at Underground, I think that was the name of it. But anyway, it was really awesome to finally play there, and it was a sold out crowd, and it was just awesome and rowdy. And like, if I were to remember one right now, it would be that one. But there are literally just an endless amount of good shows and fun times being in that band.
Yeah, definitely. My next question: all-time favorite punk hardcore show you attended that you didn't play, that you kind of went to and saw and were like, wow, this is fucking the shit right here.
Man, that is a very good question. I'm having an incredibly hard time of thinking of. Yeah, I don't know, man. There was just like, I mean, honestly, there was a couple Die My Will shows that, truthfully, I don't even remember who else played. I just know I was having the time of my fucking life.
Yeah.
I mean, but there was a lot of shows that I remember having an awesome time at. What was the name of the place in Lawrence? It was like in a mill building.
God.
The mill building or the mill or something, but there was like I remember um, there was a show with like Life's Halt and No Reply and Kill Your Idols, and it was, you know, wasn't my favorite show of all time, but like those are the ones where I remember having an awesome time at,
Yeah.
and there's a ton like that. There's so many shows where every band that was on there was, I just sat there and I would either be staring or I would be up front or I would be, you know what I mean? Like just that was an era where I just fucking couldn't swallow enough of this shit.
Yeah. Speaking of that mill building, I think that I know what you're talking about. I saw Early Grace from Florida and Cave In and shit, I can't think of the other bands that played. Maybe Ire played that show. I'm not sure, but I went to a few of those, and also Knights of Columbus in Lawrence was always like a place where a lot of bands played in Lawrence too. And speaking of old stuff, I always think of Zoots up in Maine.
Oh God, yeah, man. Yeah, that place was great. There was man, I'm trying to think of some of the shows that I went up to see. I mean, those are the places where you're like, it's close enough where I can go and see Madball there.
Yeah,
I can go up and see Candiria and, whoever they were on tour with there. And certain bands passing through that otherwise you wouldn't get the chance. Buried Alive.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was who I was like, holy shit, Buried Alive is playing in fucking Maine. They must be desperate, but I'll go immediately. But that was what, places like that were for, is I was like, I knew those were going to be the crossing points for bands that were on a large tour. That wasn't like, I'm going to play a weekend tour and make that part of it. That
Yeah.
is for, if you're going out for a couple weeks, like if you're going to stop through, you want to be able to play a place like that. And there was always good crowds, and it was an awesome place to see shows.
Yeah, and Maine had some great bands too. I mean, Polyglot and Rare Form were fucking great bands back then.
Polyglot, man. I swear that I remember talking to someone about this, and they
You just
I got
there you go.
20% left on my phone because
Okay,
I don't know how to do
we'll
these things.
yeah, we'll make it quick. We'll make it quick.
Technology,
I'll
I'm
keep.
so good.
um, I'm a huge movie fan, and I always ask, what was the last movie you watched?
I watched Unsane this morning, and I haven't seen a Steven Soderbergh movie in like years. And I watched this one, and I was like, "Holy shit, this guy's awesome!" Like, I think the last thing I saw was Traffic, and so watching this, it was like perfect for what I wanted to see this morning.
Yeah, nice, nice. And speaking of movies, I always ask, what's your favorite horror movie of all time?
Creep, Creep, and Creep 2.
Nice. I have two more questions for you. Um, I'm a huge hip hop guy, just like you. If you've been listening to hip hop lately, what have you been listening to, whether it be old or new or whatever? What have you been jamming in the last couple weeks of hip hop, if you have been?
I don't have any of it on my phone. I mean, I think the only thing I have is compilation songs from the Mi Vida Loca soundtrack, which is the best boss song there is. I don't remember what it's called, but that and there's a really awesome Cypress Hill song on there, I think. That was that one. Or Funk Dubious or Psycho Realm. Things like that.
Yeah,
But that's like the only one I have on there.
nice, nice. And my final question, what was your favorite song to play live in Trap Them and Backstabbers? What were the, one song that you really like enjoyed playing live?
In Backstabbers, I loved playing the Tyler Durden song, the second song on Kamikaze Missions.
Yeah.
As far as Trap Them, once we made the song, it was Revival Spines, which, as long as that's the name of it, and I'm being correct here, I think I am. I'm,
Yeah, you are.
I haven't looked at much. So.
Yeah,
That was the song that, like, basically, once we recorded it, and I said to Brian, I was like, I love this song.
yeah,
And he's like, good, because I wrote this song for you. I knew this was going to be your song. Like, you know,
yeah.
which, again, we had the same wavelength.
Yeah, yeah. I always enjoyed like Hellionaires was always like a favorite of mine. I love that. Also, Long Runners was really one of my favorites. What Pulse Mavens was always like a good one for me too. I mean, I always jam trap them. I go back to Backstabbers, and like I said, I was on the search for Life Passed On for so long. It was like getting into Davy Jones's locker when I finally got it, and hats off to Nick Flanagan for finally. You know, I was asking everybody, and nobody had it. So um, and also I wish like I still had my Life Passed On shirt. It was this color, said Life Passed On across the chest, and then I forget what the picture was on the back, but it was a gray shirt, and I had that for the longest time. And of course I sold it when I was like, you know, young and hurting for money. I was like, yeah, I guess I'll sell this, but I'm an idiot because I should have saved it.
That's all right. Hey, I mean, check in every thrift store in New England. I'm sure there's like 40 of them around.
uh, Ryan, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I know you don't really do this for many people, and like I said, I'm honored to talk to you again, and it's great to see you and just shoot the shit with you for you know, this time frame. I didn't want to take you from anything today. I know Sunday is kind of like a family day for some people. Some people work, but I honestly thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, man. It was awesome to talk about some of the stuff that otherwise I wouldn't have remembered forever. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And also, I'll send you kind of like a clip of that Life Passed On demo, um, like on a video like clip, and I'll send it to you too.
That sounds good to me.
Just so you know, kind of like what what you recorded back then.
Yes, I'd appreciate the refreshment.
No problem. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great day, man. And it's great seeing you again. Really, honestly.
Thank you. You too, man.
All right,
Appreciate
all right, brother. Take care, and I'll be in touch.
it. All right, sounds good.
All right, man. Thank you.
You bet.
Bye.